this time.
Good evening, it's 6:15 and I'll call the February 28th Cedar Springs Public Schools School Board meeting to order. And if everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And if we can have a roll call, please, Secretary Slade.
Yes, trustee Bowser,
Here.
trustee Rivard,
Here.
trustee Vanderhyde,
Here.
treasurer Gilmore,
Here.
secretary Slager, here, vice president Schaffner,
Here.
president Reed.
Here. Thank you, and we have established a quorum for this evening's meeting, and that brings us to the adoption of the agenda, and I would entertain a motion for as presented.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? Having none, Vice President Schaffner,
Yes.
Secretary Slager,
Yes,
Treasurer Gilmore,
Yes.
Trustee Vanderhyde,
Yes.
Trustee Rivard,
Yes.
Trustee Bowser.
Yes.
President Reed, yes, the agenda is adopted. That brings us to gratitudes. Anybody want to share?
I can start. I am grateful not only that I got to go, but that our students got to go to Florida. Our band got to go to Florida this last weekend. I mean, not like yesterday, but the weekend before. It was fantastic. I mean, it was fun like you would expect that trip to be, but on top of that, they had some really great experiences. They had got to give a concert at the Disney Springs, which is their market, their shopping district. And then at Universal Studios, they actually got to record a score for about 5 minutes of the movie Secret Life of Pets. So they got to do this to the score for it. Some kids got to do the voices for it. They did some sound effects, and it's my understanding they're going to get a DVD of that when it's all done. But we got to see a rough copy. It was just really, really cool. And all that was on top of, you know, getting to go to Disney World for a couple days and Universal Studios for a couple days. So the weather was perfect. My group of kiddos that I chaperoned were fantastic. Honestly, all of the kids were fantastic. There was a couple, you know, pushing boundaries, a couple of them, but even they, you know, were up to the challenge. So it was a fantastic trip. I'm glad that we were able to do it this year, and I hope that we continue to do this in the future.
Thank you for going.
I would definitely echo that, and I think the performance is on Facebook.
I believe so. It was, I know it was live streamed.
Yep. I did watch the performance, and it was really good. Did a good job. So.
And about the third song, you can see me run out in front because I'm taking photos and didn't realize they were still playing. So.
I'm gonna watch it just for that.
Okay. Well, thank you for going.
Last Thursday, I was at Trails and I was very grateful for that time. Just the littles just give you energy. And it was good to be in the building and see them all doing their things and their hop squawks. And I'm really glad we're getting new carpet roof on. I can confirm.
It's definitely got its use.
It is.
I'll just add one thing. I spent 10 hours yesterday at our team wrestling team state finals at the Wing Stadium in Kalamazoo. And I just am grateful just for our wrestling community and just coaches and parents that have been involved over the years and pouring into these kids. What's neat about this competition, this tournament was, you know, some of the kids were a part of different clubs, including the middle school team, but this was all students from Cedar Springs. And I had two boys that'll probably never be able to be on the same team again because they're 6 years apart, because this was a K through 8th grade team. So it was just a really great time.
I was able to go to freshman orientation when my kids are doing going into that grade. So I got to sit through that again, and it was great. a lot of information, a lot of refresher information. Have some great teachers and staff there, so really appreciate that.
I'm grateful for the progress that we continue to make on both the physical projects, but also the academic gains, student wellness gains, and staffing gains that we continue to make. I went through the high school, walked through the high school office in new additions on Friday. And it's just remarkable the advances that have been made since we had the opportunity to tour back in the month of January. So we'll get another tour scheduled for you if you're interested. But you know, all the classroom the floors are in. You can actually see the spaces. It really feels neat. And then to walk through the offices is really starting to take shape. So we're making great progress. Staffing wise, we're making great progress. As long as we can keep the snow away, we'll continue to make academic progress. So making a lot of new things happen. It's a great team effort.
All right, moving on to our consent items. I would entertain a motion for as presented.
So moved.
Support.
Vice President Schopner,
Yes.
Secretary Slager,
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore,
Yes.
Trustee Vanderhyde,
Yes.
Trustee Rivard,
Yes.
Trustee Bowser,
Yes.
President Reed, yes, consent items are approved as presented. Leading us to discussion, and first up, we have grades 6 through 12 math resources with Jen Haberling, Scott Modisher, and Anna Ramirez.
Yes, welcome. Thank you. So we're grateful to have two of our fantastic teachers here to share with you a little bit of the work that we've been doing around a 612 math resource adoption. The reason that we're here is that in the early fall, the publisher of Big Ideas Math, which we use at the middle school, and Pearson both let us know that our digital access would be going dark and that the resources that we currently have board adopted will no longer be supported by them. So that gave us a bit of a, oh dear, we weren't planning to do that quite yet, but there's really a need to do that. So we are looking at new resources, and it actually gives us the chance to do something really great, because the resources that we have, you'll see in just a minute, we'll be looking at something called Ed Reports, which tells us how rigorous, how aligned, how focused are our resources. And the ones that we currently have board approved are really not very high quality. So this gives us the chance to do something a little bit better. And I have some friends here who will be able to talk with us about that. Let's see if I can get this to move forward. Scott, is there a special trick that I don't know? Oh, there we go. All right, so our math resource adoption team, you can see that it is a large group of people pictured here, ranging from our 6th grade teachers up through our secondary folks at the high school, including our technology specialist, Annie Kim. Marcus Deja from the ISD has been helping us with this. And Sammy Tenhave, who is one of our K-5 instructional specialists in math, has also been helping along the way. So we have a really wide swath of our teachers and administrators helping with this and giving their voice to it, which is important to know, because that's a big undertaking in a COVID year to bring all of these people together. And as you know, teaching is really not super easy right now. Not that it ever is, but it's been a really challenging year and a half. And these folks are willing to dedicate their time to making some improvements in the resources. So I would love to introduce Ana Ramirez, our 8th grade teacher and PLC leader, and Scott Modisher, high school teacher and PLC leader, who are here to talk us through the process we've taken. And we're doing things a little bit in a different order for this resource adoption. So typically we would bring to you, here's the one. And then for 30 days, that would be on display here at district office for any parents who are interested in taking a peek at it. we've decided because we would really, our teachers said we would really like a little bit more time with these resources to really live into them a little bit more than our time was allowing. We did have some changed schedules because of snow days and not enough subs and things like that. So we have decided that if we could, with your permission, we would like to say, here are the two we've narrowed it down to. Let's put them on display so parents could see either one and we can gather some feedback. And then our teachers are still working through a trial process of both of those, and we'll come together in April to say, and then this is the one that the committee is recommending, and I'll be back then in April to share that one with you, okay? So it kind of gives us a neat opportunity in case ever there were parent concerns, we'd be able to hear those before there was just one identified, and that can weigh into our decision. So I would love to introduce Anna and Scott to talk through our selection and vetting process.
So it kind of started in about November when we all got together, and Marcus led us through a couple of exercises about what do we want in a resource. And so we came up with a list for each, not each resource, but what a resource should include. And so we came up with that list. And then we looked at what does focus mean, what does coherence mean, and what does rigor mean. Those are the three big ideas in mathematics right now. Focus meaning, like, if you remember in the past, you had to do all these standards. There was all these standards for each grade level and everything else, and everybody, all the teachers were expected to get through all these standards. Well, focus now with a Common Core, we've really kind of focused all those standards. And so we're looking at just the Common Core standards more than anything else. Whereas a lot of resources in the past, they've just thrown out, here's all these standards, you go do them, and all these extra things that you have to go do. And so we're really looking at the Common Core, making sure that we're looking at just those standards that are particular to that. Coherence is like how usable. Like usability, basically, like how readable is it? How can students work their way through it? Things like that. That's what the coherence is about. And then the rigor is: are we making them problem solvers? Are we making them critically think? Did I do something?
Probably some magic.
So the rigor is it making them critically think? Is it making them problem solve? Is it making them like really think about the mathematics and everything else that goes into it? So those are the three big key ideas, and that's what EdReports uses also more than anything else. So that's what we were focusing on more than anything else with those things. And then during that same meeting, we started to look at some of the EdReports. We went through the EdReports has every single math resource there possibly is. They went through all the rigor, the coherence, the focus. They did all that themselves, and they put it into a nice like outline and scored each one. And so we started looking at every single resource, and we were trying to come up with a list of which ones would you want to kind of look at more than anything else. So
I will add that we did not look at every single resource. We started at the top
Oh,
with
yeah.
the resources that really kind of were green light, resources that met a lot of those requirements that we wanted to have. We tried to stay away from those things that
had red and yellow and stuff like.
it had some questionable areas.
Yes, sorry.
I figured they understood that, but I figured after we kind of looked at that list and we were narrowing them down, we have now brought ourselves to two different texts, two different resources to you. And over the 8 weeks approximately right now, we are piloting these two different resources in our classrooms. So one portion of time, we're doing the first resource all at the same time, 6/12, and then the second portion, we will pilot the second resource and kind of try to see what that feels like in our classrooms over the next few months. So those two resources are Reveal and Illustrative Math, both that come from McGraw-Hill. And this is kind of what those ed reports that Scott and Jen were talking about. You'll notice the one on top there, that is our current 6th grade text. And as you expect, it's kind of like green, yellow, red light, red being not good, green being the best. And currently, our big ideas is not rating so well. It's rating pretty poorly, and actually, many of the things aren't even available. So, looking at updates, you'll notice Reveal is rated pretty highly. And this is not a report that comes from a specific company. This is a group of educators that work to evaluate curriculums.
This is the high school one. So right now we're using Pearson, and that's the top one there. Obviously, that's a red one, which is 8 out of 18, just on the focus and coherence. I taught out of that for 7 years, and I can say that that's honestly true. Is that focus is just not there. It's just a lot of standards that you just can't get to all of them, and so so it has no focus. So the Reveal is obviously all greens and what we're looking at, and so that's why we chose that one.
And then this is a comparison to Illustrative, which is very, very similar, and helps you understand why we would choose these two resources if they both meet all those requirements in comparison to what we have. So that is why we are testing out both.
And then obviously high school one with Illustrative also. We did try to choose 2 resources that would be 6 through 12. There was a couple resources that are rated really highly just for middle school or just for high school. But we felt like we needed to have a continued idea all the way through. And so we're gonna adopt either Reveal or Illustrative 6 through 12 and just have that all the way through.
So on the horizon, what's coming next? Thank you very much. The books will be available at district office for anyone who is interested in taking a peek at them. We do have most grade levels represented. Illustrative does not have physical textbooks that they send us for a pilot or a trial. They're all available online. So you could do a Google search of Illustrative Math. There are several different vendors. We happen to be looking at the one from McGraw-Hill. But Kendall Hunt also supplies it, and Illustrative is a program that requires the vendors to keep their program secure. So they cannot change very many things about it. So it really is quite similar. The things that differ are more of the ancillary online platform, usability, those kinds of things. But the programming in terms of the math instruction is very much the same of all of the different illustrative examples. And then the Reveal example, we do have those down in my office area, and anyone who would want to come see them and to take a peek at them is welcome to do so over the next 30 days. The committee will make a recommendation in April and mid-April. They are working on some feedback as they go. So after the first week of trying a resource, we know it's uncomfortable. Whenever something changes about your instruction, it's uncomfortable. But we want to get, what's your first impression? How does this rate on those things that the committee determined were most important in a math resource and that we know lead to the best outcomes in mathematics instruction? Then at the end of looking at that resource, what are your impressions? Then at the end of week 1 of the second resource and at the end of the final one, we'll ask the committee members to say, you know, Reveal or Illustrative is better on this trait, Reveal or Illustrative is better on that trait, and we'll list them out to ask them to kind of make some choices there. And then what do you think will be the best for our students, really? That's what we want to keep in the center, is great outcomes for our students. Once we have that recommendation, we'll come back to you all with that recommendation, hoping for some approval from you. And then we would place orders before the end of the school year so that teachers would have the opportunity to have those resources in their hands over the summer, not come back in August and say, here's something new, go ahead. Both resources would have some training involved. Reveal, a little less than illustrative. Illustrative is a different instructional model, and because of the science behind that, it does require a bit more implementation training and then ongoing training throughout the year. Either way, one of the things we'll be asking the committee is what support will you need in order to be successful with this resource? So that will be something that we'll be planning forward. Over the summer, we plan to pay teachers to do some planning so that they have the choice of, let's plan together as a group. I need to do some individual planning and then we'll come back together. Or maybe we'd like to take some release time because it is something that takes a full year or 2 or 3 to feel like I'm confident with this new resource, and we want to make sure we support them through that. The Kent ISD and Marcus Deja will continue to support our teachers as well. And then we hope to have some instructional support in place in terms of someone to journey alongside and do reflective conversations with people, some co-teaching, some modeling, some things like that. Fall, we hope to implement, and we know that that always requires us to give ourselves lots of grace because teachers want to hit the A+ mark. And so we know that we'll have to say often, you know, give yourself grace, you're learning too, and it's okay. We'll have opportunities to continue learning in our professional development plan going into the next couple of years. So on those days when they have PLC time, I would imagine that would be a bulk of the maths PLC work would be, let's talk about how it's going. Let's plan for the next couple, you know, what do we want students to do in this next unit? How are we going to know if they do it? What will we do if they don't know how to do it? And what will we do if they already know how to do it? So that's very much the PLC work already. And then they'll have time to continue planning and norming with all of that support into the first several years of implementation. So that's the plan that we have in place. When we order, we would be ordering for 6th through 12th grade math. Though we have not really talked yet about the upper level math courses. I think our math teacher there is looking at the resources that exist and deciding, is that something we want to continue that continuum or shall we keep what we have? But we would be ordering 6 years of digital access for students and teachers, student workbooks and teacher guides. And then we would also be on top of that, including implementation, training and professional development and support that comes along with whatever we choose. So for illustrative, it looks a bit like this sequence that you have in your board book. And for reveal, it's very similar. The difference really is in the advanced track and where does that pick up. So that's work that's yet to come. So we're curious what questions you might have for us.
I have 2 comments and 2 questions, but they should be brief. One, I actually really like the concept of parents and community members having 2 to look at, because I think it's actually more helpful because you can compare more. Oftentimes, if you're just reviewing one thing, you don't really know what else is out there, especially if it's not something that is part of your field and you've been involved with. So I like that. And I guess, well, my 2 questions I'll go to next. I wondered if student feedback was involved at all in the decision-making in terms of how they are engaging?
We actually didn't talk about it, but it was something I thought about.
Yeah.
Is wanting to survey the kids and see kind of their feelings as well. Maybe not the same type of survey, you know, more of a more kid language type thing, but it was something that we were thinking of doing, so.
Yeah, and actually, we didn't meet together as our PLC the last time. But we, as a high school, decided, yes, we're gonna give them a Google form to fill out at the end of each one and kind of get their feedback on how they think it went. Knowing that it's just a small snippet of the, you know, of everything that goes into it. But yes, we're gonna get that feedback.
And there's definitely a learning curve that we're really not able to hit quite, you know, as in depth as we would if we had used the resource like it.
Sure, no, that's great. And then I really like, so my second comment was I really like that you did choose 2 that are 6th through 12th grade, because I think that helps the process be seamless. So then my other question is, have you consulted with the lower grades through 5th grade?
I'll speak to that, Tracy. That's a great question. They're actually in a resource adoption that was planned for this year. So they use Math in Focus, which also is all read on Ed Reports. It's one of the probably least aligned materials that you could be using. So they have been working on this for the past year as a math committee, and just today met to identify the one after having 2 or 3 weeks to try each resource. So we have ensured that they are aligned. It will probably not be the same resource from K-5 and then through 6-12, but the practices will be very similar. So some of the math talks and the questioning techniques will carry from K through 12.
I do have a question. I know that just from my children's experience, my niece, that from really from 2016 to 2020, I mean, algebra 2 has been horrendous. So is this a little bit easier for the students to grasp with algebra 2? Because I know up from my niece was an AA student, and then my son just got good grades for sports. And so but they both were having issues with algebra 2. And so I don't know if this, this company is that a little bit better. Seeing all the red, I mean, maybe it wasn't all Cameron's fault. I don't know. But I see that. I'm just hoping that maybe this, how do you feel?
I wouldn't say it's, I wouldn't say it's easier. I don't want to say that it's going to be easier. I think it's a different way of looking at the material.
Okay.
I've always tried to, I teach algebra 2, who you're speaking to. So I try to teach about problem solving and critical thinking, and more about that than the material, because I know not everybody's going to use the concepts that we learn in algebra 2. And so the way I teach is about the problem solving and critical thinking more than anything else. And I think both of these do that.
Okay.
And so I think that's what's nice about either one. And so it's going to cover the same material, but how it covers the material is going to be completely different than what we've had before. So
Okay.
I think it'll be good.
I'm looking at the numbers, that anything's really probably got to be better.
So you did say that the higher level math might not be part of this curriculum. So I was wondering what the why would be for that to break off.
So AP has their own. So we have AP Calc and AP Stats, and they already have adopted ones, and so they have to go with those. It would be the pre-calc, and with pre-calc, it's kind of difficult because pre-calc has, in the Common Core, there are these plus standards, which are the 4th year standards, and that's what pre-calc is made up of. And so the plus standards in the Common Core is all over the place. And so it's not really, there's not very many resources that provide good things for that. Not that he's not going to be looking at them. I think Chris will definitely look at them. And what each one, I know illustrative doesn't go past algebra 2. But he feels good because he's also the AP Calc teacher. He feels good about how he's preparing his kids for the Calc class also. And so that's the whole idea of the Calc, is to get into that AP Calc, stuff like that. So, and he's feeling good about anybody that doesn't take AP Calc, he's preparing them for college or after high school. So for what he's doing right now. So.
And his AP scores would show that.
Yeah, very much so. Yes.
Any other questions about 6-12 math?
You mentioned that of the 2 choices that you've selected, they're taught in a different way, and one of them will require our teachers some additional time to get up to speed with it. Now, I'm not an educator, but what does that mean? You're educating, what other learnings would they have to do in order to teach these properly?
So illustrative is a problem-based curriculum, and reveal is a little bit more middle of the road, traditional leaning. So it's just a different way of thinking about how you approach the beginning of a lesson. And I would defer to our experts here who might be able to talk a little bit about it, a little bit more based on what they see.
So with illustrative being a problem-based, we've been going to what we call MISHP. It's been a KISD sponsored program for the last 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. And a lot of what we've learned from Michigan is that problem-based idea. It's that critical thinking, it's that problem solving more than anything else. I think there will be some definitely teachers that will have to grow more than others, but I know illustrative that is that way. And Reveal is much of what, a little bit deeper and more in depth than what we're doing right now. But it's more, a little bit leaning towards that traditional kind of idea, so.
I think of it as kind of the questioning students to help them develop understanding or just telling them the stuff.
Okay.
So, maybe you could look at a textbook and say, oh yeah, this is how you do it, follow step A, B, C, D, right? And you just go along with it, where the problem based is more helping students through that discovery. And sometimes we just need some help with figuring out how to ask those right questions.
And that's what our PLC time and any, anything that we have in the summertime will help us with that. So, but we've been talking about it through our PLCs in the last few years. And so people know about it, but coming up with those questions sometimes is the difficult part. But we'll help them. Yeah.
And having students be comfortable with that as well, because it does require students to do a bit more talking than they might normally do in a math class.
And explaining.
Yeah, the why. Why
So-
do you think that?
A lot of times, numbers people aren't really talkers. So how does that work out to success or testing or even for differentiating learning? You know what I mean?
So it's, in my experience, it's understanding. So I have noticed when I just tell a student how to do something, and I just said, this is how you do it, just do it. 10 minutes down the road, they have no idea why they did what they did, or what its purpose ever was. But when they understand the behind of why something works, they might not remember the exact algorithm, but they know the why behind it, so they're able to then apply it to whatever the case is. And so as far as then assessments or testing later, they can then apply it to whatever the case may be.
And we ask questions ourselves, or we ask questions to them. So the way I teach my classes, I'm never really telling them how to do it. I'm asking them questions to probe their thinking in order for them to understand what's going on. And so now, as I ask those questions, and they're hearing me day after day after day asking the same types of questions, now when they get to that test, they can ask those same questions to themselves and try to work through it as they go through it.
So what if the student says, I don't know? I mean,
Right.
at what point do you tell them, you know what I mean?
I don't, I keep asking them questions still.
It's like being a coach. It's like being a coach a little bit. So the example I saw on Friday, and I'm sure they could give multiple other examples, the entry point was 4 pictures. And the question that you started with was, which of these is not like the others? And so it's a very easy entry point for any student. It could have been the colors were not the same. It could have been a pattern was not the same. It could have been something more technical, like we heard Chris Painter say about tessellations. 3 have tessellations and 1 does not. So there were multiple entry points to begin the conversation where students can all be right around their answer and then launch the learning from there.
One other thing, you opened by saying that our current provider identified for us that they'd be going dark at some point. Now, I guess that doesn't matter, that's behind us. Are we sure the 6 years we're getting is what we're getting? Are we gonna be
That
surprised
has
here?
been a question that the committee has asked as well, because it is hard to learn a new resource. So illustrative has stood the test of time and is something that I think it's very research-based and will be around for a bit of time. I don't know as much about Reveal. With the digital resources, there's always the risk that there will be a changeover. One would hope that part of the reason that our current provider is going dark is because they're going to be making some improvements, hopefully, so that they're not all red on ed reports. And vendors are really starting to pay attention to that because educators are as well. So since we've chosen something that is proven to be focused and coherent and rigorous and aligned, we would hope that that would continue on. It might be in a new digital format, so in 6 years, we may just be getting the newest version of it, but it should still align with the programming.
I don't think ed reports was as prevalent
True.
when we first put big ideas in place.
Right.
So I think had it been and had we seen all that red to start with, you know, we would have probably been making a different choice.
But we are certainly not alone. Almost every curriculum director I've talked to in West Michigan is looking at a math adoption this year.
One more question. Tracy asked about the students getting involved. Have the parents been engaged also? As a parent myself, I know it's difficult to have a child come home with homework and try to teach them something that, you know, I may or may not be familiar with. And I just wondered if you had their perspective.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
about-
we have not yet. It certainly has been a question that teachers have asked, though. What is there to assist parents from home that is pretty easy for parents to navigate? So that's definitely something we're looking at.
I know both of them do have a parent supplement that will help, like, the parents understand where everything comes from. So I have noticed that in the materials, and so that is part of it, but to get their feedback, no.
And we certainly would be glad to receive it the next 30 days too.
Sure, yeah, they have that opportunity now, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, Scott. Being a former math teacher, it all adds up.
That's funny. It's very funny.
Feels like a dad joke, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's so formulated.
Oh, wow.
All right, discussion item B, high school course offerings, curriculum guide, course selection process review. Jen and Becky Cooey are presenting.
And this is mostly going to be Becky. Do you want to come drive over
Yes,
here?
I will.
All right.
I was like, I want this computer screen, please.
It's just scrolling up because it's in Georgia.
Okay.
Slowly.
So I am Rebecca Cooey, or Becky Cooey. I am a school counselor at the high school. I have students last names A through L right now, and sometimes I've had M, so maybe I've had your student, or maybe not. I mostly had the beginning of the alphabet throughout my time here. I've been a counselor at the high school for a while now. I can't believe I can't think how many years, like 8, I think. So it's been a while, and I've seen lots of different versions of what high school counseling looks like at the high school. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we help our students plan their coursework. And I'll show you a little bit about what our process has been recently and then some of the upcoming things that we have in place. So we're trying to help our students plan for the future. So one of the things that I say all the time whenever I'm meeting with students is I want you to leave here already have taken steps into what your future is. So whether that's doing KCTC program in your career interest and you're like doing the job that you're going to do after high school, or if it's doing dual enrollment or an AP class to get some of that college coursework out of the way, we want them to already be thinking about their future as they're planning their courses. All right, so our current process is students complete their EDP through Naviance. An EDP is Educational Development Plan. They start that in 7th grade and they revise it every year. And so they look at, first they do some self-discovery because they have to kind of figure out what makes a good fit for a career for them or what they're going to do after high school. And then they create some career goals around that and they create training goals. Like what are the training they're going to need before, you know, they move on to that career. And so once they create those goals and they do that self-discovery, then picking their classes is a little bit easier because they know, you know, I'm going to go into science, I need to be heavy in the sciences. You know, some of through Naviance, you can look at different careers and you can actually see the course they recommend for it. So it's really nice to have that piece there because they can already start to see like, how are they going to align what they want to do in the future with what they're doing now. And then we have been doing a 4-year scheduling plan in Naviance. So they just look at Naviance and there's like, which 4 English classes are going to take, which 4 math classes are you going to take? And it's not very like interactive, but they just kind of know because we've talked about it over and over, what they need for graduation requirements, so they kind of pick them out. So that happens in the EDP, and that we go over and over again, so they can keep exploring themselves and keep looking at what they want to do in the future, because it changes a lot. I love to give the 8th or the 9th graders their 8th grade EDP, because they're like, what? I can't believe I picked that. So, and then we do some pre-scheduling lessons. So in advisory or in a large group, we will have the students, like all the freshmen, come and talk to them about what the next step, what classes they should be taking in the future. They get their transcript at that point, so they can see, did they fail anything that they need for graduation? Do they need to retake that? Have they met all those little requirements they might not know about? So they can kind of compare their transcript to what the scheduling list is. I have linked on here their scheduling checklist. So we have a document that I use all the time because I just like it's one page that has all of the courses that we offer at Cedar Springs High School on it. And it kind of tells which category they're going to be meeting with those courses. So a lot of times they're new students. I'll pull that out and be like, okay, let's see what you've already taken. Here's what we have. And then they can use the curriculum guide to go back in and see like in more depth what certain classes are like. And then I did link also that PowerPoint presentation that we do with the students. It's very similar whether we do it in a large group or individually, just to kind of walk through kind of what are your next classes you're going to be taking, what should you be thinking about, how does KCTC dual enrollment AP fit and things like that. Throughout advisory and then other things throughout the year, night meetings with parents and things, we talk about dual enrollment AP, all those pieces that might fit into their plan for their future. So we have lots of little pieces that come together in how they plan their schedule for their future. And then we do scheduling sessions. So we did those, we ended I guess tomorrow will be our last day because of the snow day. We had a little bit of a hiccup on getting those done, but the counselors go into the English classes typically, and we meet with the students just in that small group, and they look at their scheduling checklist that they've been filling out. They kind of have it all planned out, and they fill it in Power School, what their requests for the next year. Doesn't guarantee they'll get them, so they have to put some alternates and things like that in there as well. But then we answer more questions. So if they have very specific questions, or I wanted to do this, but I couldn't figure out how it, it doesn't fit into the normal setting or normal progression. How do I do it? And then we follow up with meetings with them too, if there's anything that's really out of the normal, because we do have students. I'm like, do what you want to do. I don't make it work. So I really encourage them to, if you want to do KCTC and EMC, we can make that work. If you want to do AP and EMC, if you want to do any of these combinations of programs that feel like you're not going to have enough room, we're going to figure it out with you. So we did that in English classrooms. We let them schedule appointments afterwards. If they're in the English class and like, oh, they can schedule appointments with their counselors more individually. And then that's pretty much how they're scheduling their appointments. We have students who come talk to us all throughout. This year has been a really great year. I don't know what we're doing differently, but we have so many student appointments this year. It's kind of blossomed that we're very busy and helping students with all those little specific questions they have. So we also sometimes we try to do junior meetings where we meet with the juniors just to make sure that they have that senior year plan really strong. So we'll probably put out let's make sure we're getting your senior year strong here pretty soon. But they've been doing such a good job of being proactive that we've probably seen a lot of our students already that have interest in pieces. And then upcoming, the course planner in Naviance will be replacing a 4-year plan survey. And I'm just going to show you a video because I think it's going to do way better than I could ever do at presenting what it will actually look like for students, but it helps to connect the pieces of what we do in the EDP with their course planner or with their plan for their future courses. So hopefully this will make sound. All right, you guys can't do that. Time to go. Is there? What if I do like this?
This new experience simplifies setup and implementation and allows schools and districts to fulfill ILT requirements and align course plans with career pathways. Students will have greater ownership over their high school course planning and are well positioned for future career success. Creating a new course plan is straightforward very creative time studies. In the second step, is where you begin to see that are aligned with district and student needs. Students are given the option to select a career cluster in order to see the courses that are correlated with that pathway. Individual pathways in a cluster are more tailored to a specific interest. The clusters have enable special teaching customized to meet your school or district needs. Using the sidebar, students will find an overview of pertinent career and interest information as they move through the process. From here, students will have access to information, including favorite career clusters and pathways, along with the results of the career cluster finder and career team assessment. Keeping this information front and center helps students connect learning to their lives. A grid layout of coursework, along with an overview of progress, provides students with easy-to-use interface for adding coursework and understanding progressions. The sidebar content even provides a messaging tool for students to easily communicate with counselors about their course plan. Once the full course plan is completed, students can review their courses with their parents and submit for approval, all from the same page. After students have submitted for approval, their plan is scanned and they are provided with college hours. This provides an overview to see if their plans meet entrance requirements at specific colleges on their college list. This tool ensures that students have all
This
the
one has to be
tools to reach their goals before instituting. There is more to the reimagined course planner than we have here. You might want to see all.
I'll pause it there because otherwise it's just a sales pitch. So I don't know if you could hear very well, but basically the video walks you through how all those pieces that I talked about are going to be visual on the screen with the student as they're picking their courses, and they'll also connect to their future training. So they will know, like, are the courses I'm taking going to prepare me for that college that I want? And so it's a really cool tool. I shared that video, Jen, last year, and I said, we just would really love to have this because it would just make all the pieces that we put in here pull together a little bit. And our students are kind of like so-so on Naviance because they don't see the power of it yet. So I think this is just going to help show them the power of what Naviance can do and help them. And there's some upgrades that just came this year that I'm so excited about as well.
I will say, we do have a link and
Yeah, you can-
our board book, so we can go back and watch it.
Yeah, you can watch it again.
I watched it earlier. It was very cool.
I'm like, yeah, I just love this. So basically this year, oh, it's back. But this year, we're just doing the basic course planning. So we have that basic piece set up right now, and I'm just playing with it to make sure I know how to do it myself, because we have somebody helping me on the Naviance end. But once I have all the pieces and like going through with students, because we had a lot of staff changing at the high school, I've been doing a lot of training and staff and things, so I haven't had as much time to devote to like making sure this is up and ready to go. So this year, we're just gonna have the general course planning ready to go. Year 2, we want to add parents so that they can actually look in and see. And we can do lots of things in Naviance we're not really doing yet, but we can put notes in that you could see like, oh, my student met with the counselor to talk about this. The career cluster coordination, so they can see what careers might match their courses, and the college connection. So all those pieces will start to get a little further next year. And then for year 3 and on, we'll just continue to be working with the departments on, you know, if a student wants to go into a STEM career, what are the courses they should take? So we can have them have little differences in their programs of study to make sure that they are aware of kind of the variations or what classes they should be taking depending on what their plan is. So we're really excited about that. And so that just leaves me to question and answers.
You mentioned this process starts in 7th grade, but they don't actually use the program until high school. Is that correct? Or they would be?
So we have a sequence that we go through. So in 7th grade, there's certain self-discovery tools that they use, and they write their career goal and they write their education and planning goal. So that's kind of the basics of an EDP. And then their 8th grade year, they add a little more self-discovery, update their goals. Freshman year, do a little bit more. So every year they're adding. There's quite a few features, so they can keep adding. They will be as early as 8th grade able to make a course plan for their high school.
So how are parents involved in that process?
So at this point, we've been wanting to get parents onboarded into Naviance. We just haven't been able to yet, just because we've had just more like a time crunch. But as we get parents involved, they'll be able to actually go into Naviance. They'll have a parent code. I have some parents who have been asking lately because there's scholarships and things in there too that they'll want to get to. So they can go in and they'll be able to view their student, and there's like a list of things they can see for their student. So they'll be able to look at the EDP. Eventually, the EDP is like a student profile report, and it'll have all the like times that they met with their counselor, things we've discussed in there. It'll have their 4-year plan, their college and career plans and everything. And there's a way for parents to sign off on it as well. So we'll have, parents will be able to see it, sign off on it.
How are our students selecting their career in 7th grade? What's a little bit more background of how we get to that?
Yeah, and we know that it's gonna transform.
understand.
Yeah, so we, at the 7th grade level, we do a career cluster finder. So they're just looking at clusters of careers that might be a good fit for them. So it might be in health sciences, or it might be in business. So they just kind of get a general idea. And we have the assessment is a pretty quick assessment, but it looks like, what are your favorite, classes that you take in high school? What are some things that you're interested in doing? And it just gives them like some general knowledge about what cluster they might be interested in, because then they can kind of see what classes to take that might fit that cluster. So we start out kind of broad and then build to more specific as they get older.
So in 8th grade, are they taking this same series of questions, or we're
They'll-
keeping them over
yeah.
here?
There's
You've already selected business, that's where you're gonna be.
No, they don't have to stick with that. So they can retake anything they've taken in the past. And then we'll assign a different self-exploration tool every year. There's 8 of them. So like right now with juniors or seniors, I'm like, do them all. There's nothing to stop you. But we will have a scope and sequence of, right now we have, but like the 7th graders do this, 8th graders do this, the freshmen do this. And
Very wide
Yeah.
as we get up.
yeah, and they can redo anything. They're like, if they're, I have juniors who are like, I really want to redo that because it doesn't quite fit me anymore. And so,
And I haven't watched the video. Does that have anything to do with that, or that's just a course planning?
so that when they course plan, it shows you, which you can tell, there's a column on the side that has their results from some of those self-discovery surveys and tells them like what they might be good fits for. And so all that's like right in their face as they're planning. And they can actually choose, like, I wanted to do this career cluster, what courses should I take, or this career, what courses should I take? And it's just like right into like some other links to be able to see that, so they can plan their courses right from looking at the careers and the classes that they should take.
Thank you. Great job for all the.
You said there's, oh, sorry.
When they fill out the course sheet, and then that corresponds with the curriculum guide, like, how do they always get what they pick, or what's that ratio, or how does that change? Like they turn it in and they're like, oh geez, I didn't get what I wanted.
Yeah.
So what happens then?
So they always, when we do the scheduling checklist, we always tell them, pick some alternates because there might be some background. And when I schedule with the juniors in particular going to their senior year, it's a lot more times where you're gonna have one class only offered 1 hour because, they're taking an AP class, or even just some of the electives aren't offered every hour, where there's more of them for freshmen, sophomores, juniors. So we let them know, like, you're putting your request in. Our school district is amazing because we're trying to honor your request. Like, we make choices based on what you request versus some schools that just say, this is how many spots you have in this class, first come, first serve. We say, we're gonna try to make as much spaces as we can. Doesn't always work for everybody, so we just let them know, like, that's why you pick alternates as backups. And sometimes those don't even always work. And in that case, we have another conversation with them. Like, hey, you still have a hole in your schedule. This is what happened. How can we make this the best we can make it? So sometimes that looks like putting an online course in that fits with their career goals. Sometimes that looks like, being creative with how we schedule them. But we try to work with them specifically so that everyone gets, for the most part, what they want. I don't know like what percentage of them don't get everything that they want. And it really, like, if their students have to get certain classes for graduation, we make sure they get those. Those are gonna be non-negotiable. But there's some times where they might not get what they want. We try to have a conversation and do our best. And we've already prepared them to know that it might not happen the way you hoped, but you've already given us some ideas of things we could do instead.
So when are we gonna schedule for next year?
We just did. Okay. So I finished my last day in classes today, and then we have, I think, one more teacher for English that's gonna be scheduling tomorrow.
So you said there's a bunch more counseling appointments that were made this year. Are they different types of questions, or is it just more frequency of the same types of questions you guys usually get?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it'd be nice if we could answer them in one place versus over and over in the small. For the most part, it's been students planning their schedule for next, the following semester. So right now, we're fielding a lot of appointments for next year's, just to make sure they have everything nailed down for it. Before the semester, so starting in probably October, we had a great bulk of students who were planning for the next semester, just make sure they either had everything set or they want to do something different to make sure it matched their career goals. So it was a lot of just scheduling, making sure that things fit with what they were hoping for.
Do you think the program, the audience is gonna help with that at all, or?
That is the hope for sure.
Okay.
So that it can do some of that work. The hard part is that it's not gonna be foolproof, like, it's gonna say you need this, when maybe you could use like some sort of variation from it. So there will be times where students will have to put something potentially in audience that might not totally match what they're doing. But it should hopefully make sure that every student has a chance to look at how their career goals are matching and make sure that, not just the kids who are proactive and, coming to the counselor are getting what they need, but also every student across the board.
So is that Untitled for to be expanded or to use more next year or what?
Yeah, so the course planner has just a few more steps for me to have it ready to use this year. So we will have some classroom guidance lessons, hopefully at the end of this year, where we'll start to use it, but we still need to demo with students and see what errors are going to come up when they're trying to do it. So that's where we're at right now. We have mostly everything in there and ready to go, but we just need to see what are the student experience for it. Some of our seniors have seen it and they're playing it. But.
Do you know of any other districts that are using?
Yes, so Naviance is used by Northview. We've been in Northview a couple times to do trainings there about Naviance. I want to say Forest Hills or East Grand Rapids are using it. I know Linda Ruppke came from East Grand Rapids and they were using it there. So there's several schools in the area. So we go to the trainings. I'm sorry, I don't remember all of them. But we see quite a handful of the different area Kent County schools who are using Naviance. I think it's growing a little bit. Career Cruising is the other one, which is not as a different name. It's common in the area.
Questions?
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up for discussion, we have food service equipment purchase. Scott's presenting, and this is on for action this evening.
So I will do my best to follow up in the wake of Mr. LaHaye's departure. Chris presented some items to you at our meeting on the 14th. So there were 3 items that were presented. The first was the presentation of some combination ovens for the high school. And at that time, the projected cost of those combination ovens was $40,000. Chris's recommendation was that we move to purchase a combination oven for a price to not exceed $37,223. So those bids actually came in slightly under projection for the combination oven. The second item that we spoke about last month or last week was the purchase of some additional cafeteria tables. And at that time, before we had the bids, Chris was projecting the cost of those tables to be in the ballpark of $80,000. The actual bid came through at $76,555 for the cafeteria tables. We'd be purchasing 46 tables at that cost. And then the third item is the serving line. The serving line is currently out for RFP. The closing date on that is March 9. And so we'll have bid tabulations and have that information to the board for our, hopefully we'll get it together for our first meeting in March. But if we run into a snafu, we may have to push that back a little bit. So the recommendation for this evening that we'll be asking you to make is, or to approve, the purchase of a combi oven for the price of $37,223. And then the second purchase for 46 cafeteria tables, that would be to a cost not to exceed $76,555. So I will take any questions that you may have. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah, and the tables really will be nice. They'll be utilized at the elementary buildings, which is, we need some freshening up there. Okay,
Okay, all right.
very good. Thank you.
We'll move on for the 2022-2023 Schools of Choice and Section 105C resolution.
So our recommendation is to move forward with our schools of choice approach as we have in the past. So it would be to opt out of the 105 resolution, the section 105, and opt in to the section 105C, as well as the Kent County Consortium Agreement. So the 105C permits districts who are contiguous to the ISD's boundaries to be able to act in our schools of choice exchange, just as they would if they were in the within the Kent County ISD region. So no change on our, no proposed change on the, yeah.
Any questions on that? That's on for action. Discussion item E, Sex Education Advisory Board Program Recommendation. Jen Haberlin, this is on for action, so this is a review.
Absolutely. So you'll remember last time I shared the agenda with you from our Reproductive Health Advisory Board meeting that we had in February. The recommendation of the committee is that we continue our strong relationship with Willing to Wait and the programming that they offer for reproductive health. We did hear from them some of the changes they've made in terms of updated statistics and more accurate representations of specific slides and things like that. In the past, Cedar Springs has chosen to omit the socks in the dark lesson as well as the morning after pill. We intend to continue to omit the morning after pill, but the committee felt that it was important to include the socks in the dark lesson. In addition, they felt that it was important to include updated statistics on LGBTQ, especially because of the of what the statistics say to that population of students and how it helps engage them in the material as well. And then continuing with the updates to internal and external female anatomy. So with, I'd be glad to answer any questions you have, but we would hope that this would be approved this evening.
We appreciate the minute format, that was helpful.
Great.
Any other questions? Second read. Okay, thank you. We'll move forward. Thank you, Jen. Item F, the City of Cedar Springs utility easements. So this is on for action tonight, and it's a review, and Scott's going to give us a reminder.
Yeah, so we've been working with the City of Cedar Springs to upgrade the water system as it would be able to eventually serve campus to a greater capacity. The easement that was provided to us from the City of Cedar Springs is very straightforward. It's a utility easement that allows them to drop a new line onto our campus. We need to grant them permission to do that.
Any questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then item G, we have a legal update, and Scott is presenting.
So back on May 20th, 2021, we were served with a lawsuit from a member of the community indicating or expressing that we were violating an individual's rights by following the mandates put forward by the state of Michigan regarding masks and other restrictions that were in place that we were following regarding other COVID protocols. So that took place on May 20th. We were all served I was served as an administrator with the district was served, and each of the board members was served. On the 2nd of September, our attorney, John Miller from Gianmarco, Mullins and Horton, filed a motion to dismiss based on a lack of standing and merit. On November 1st, the plaintiff then filed a motion to compel, which requires us to take action. On November 11th, 2021, that motion was denied. And so a motion to compel is that one party is demanding that another party take certain actions. And the court denied that motion. Finally, on February 11, we received notice that the original motion had been dismissed. And I'll just read briefly to you from our attorney. I shared this with you as well. I'm happy to pass along the opinion dismissing the plaintiff's lawsuit. The court found that the plaintiff lacked standing to file a lawsuit and that the lawsuit was baseless. So that came through on February 11. Then we received word on the 18th of February that an objection was filed. And I can read to you again from our attorney on that. So this came through from John Mullins again on the 18th of February. So there is a note from John Miller. Enclosed is the plaintiff's objection to this dismissal. We will prepare a response, but it is unlikely that the court will change its mind in this matter, will remain dismissed. He'll keep us further apprised of any further developments. In the meantime, should we have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to him. So that the objection came through on the 18th. Then on the 24th, we received the following email again from John Miller, our attorney, just indicating, good afternoon, this came through quicker than usual. Attached is the federal judge's opinion on the plaintiff's objection to the magistrate's judge's legal opinion. So now we've had a magistrate judge dismiss the case. A federal judge also has dismissed the case. The federal judge adopted the magistrate's dismissal. Also, the judgment is closing the plaintiff's case. The plaintiff can seek further review, but they would have to go to the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals in Cincinnati. So furthermore, then we received notice on the 24th, or excuse me, on the 25th, that the judge has ordered the plaintiff to pay the district a sum of $1,800 to cover our legal fees. And that payment has to be made by March 23rd, 2022. So from John's position, John Miller's position, this is a closed case. If the plaintiff does not pay the legal fees of the district, then there will be further court action against the plaintiff. But again, just repetitive use of the words frivolous and baseless was their the basis for their opinion. So, any questions on that?
No, thank you for
Thank-
sharing.
Thank you for your work on that.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, moving to discussion item H, 2022-23 organizational meeting revisions.
So back on January 10, we adopted a set of organizational meeting proposals. So one was a calendar, other included who was going to be the recording secretary for the board meetings. So the recording secretary is no longer with the organization. And there were 2 dates that shifting work sessions from November back to October and from March back to February just gives us a little bit more time to put real timely data in front of the board. And I'd also had the wrong date for our second meeting in March. And so I made those corrections as well. And so what I've submitted to you is just the same basic tenets of the organizational meeting that you approved on January 10, but with some minor revisions, naming Barb Gust as our recording secretary, and then those 3 corrections to the calendar.
Any questions? Straightforward. Thank you for your explanation.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, that brings us to item 8, which is public comments, and this is the time that we would hear from the public for 3 minutes. If anyone would like to address the board, we won't be answering you at this time, but it's our time to listen to any concerns or any issues pertaining to the district. So I would open the floor now if we have anyone for public comment.
So we received 1 request to make public comment from Kathy Pro. Okay.
I think I put my public comments in on November 15th of 2021 regarding the cleanliness of our middle school. On November 16th, an email went out to the middle school staff from Brian Baldwin that forwarded from Jen Herling that was sent from Scott, Stacy, and Jen stating what a pleasure it was to walk through the middle school today. It's tremendously life-giving to see teachers and students in action. Thank you for so warmly welcoming us to the school. And not one of them came to our kitchen, which I was sad about, and I never did receive an email regarding my public comment. On December 1st of 2021, Dr. Burns sent a staff email stating, I just wanted to let you know that the QR code from GRBS did work. Today I came to my classroom that had not been vacuumed in 3 days. I put a message in stating this before I went to the MT at 6:15, and by the time we returned, the room was vacuumed. We just wanted to give everybody feedback that it did work and to make it known. On the 22nd, Mr. Baldwin sent a staff email stating he was in our school yesterday, and there were 2 GRBS employees who worked in other buildings, including our building. They said they could not believe the condition that the building was in, and were excited for teachers to get back in their classrooms after they were done with them. And then Mr. Baldwin went upstairs and checked and was very excited about how they looked. On January 19th, I sent an email to Nicholas Langerhofer of GRBS on behalf of our middle school food service, stating that he stopped into our kitchen a few months ago and wanted to let him know that our current janitor, Casey, is doing a fantastic job. Our kitchen floors and bathroom has not looked this good in many years, except when Dominic was there. Jackie, who was training her, was a great trainer for Casey and was always making sure things were done properly, and Casey was doing the same thing. We want to give her a huge wow and pray that she will remain here as our janitor. And he responded in thankfulness that the feedback was good, and he's glad to hear that it improved. On the 10th of February, I emailed him again because I would have the opportunity to use one of our ladies' bathrooms because our toilet was not working in our kitchen. And it was, all the toilets were filthy, and I thought I just like the back of the toilet, and I just thought, I'm just gonna mention it to him. Immediately, Casey came in and took pictures, and they went to the RBS, and the issue was taken care of that day, so that was awesome. So all that being said, I just wanted it to be known that our middle school is much cleaner, and I'm very thankful for that. A few other questions I have though. We have TVs that were installed in the middle of the middle school and high school to put the pictures of the menus on there, and I just wondered why we needed TVs with pictures of food menus on them. And I wondered when items get replaced in our schools that are still in usable condition, if they're being sold or if they're donated somewhere, or if they just have kind of stuff somewhere. We have a meat cutter in our kitchen that's not been used since I've worked there, and it just sits there and never been used, and I just wonder if it can be sold or donated. And then I had a few, I've been at a few board meetings in the past, and it's been mentioned in public comments about a few concerns regarding specific teachers and principals, and whether what has been investigated regarding these concerns. One teacher saying that they would continue or teach the CRT no matter what. One teacher coming from Tri-County that was let go, and an elementary principal that signs her name with their pronouns. And I just also wonder if anything was done with their bookshelves with the photographic possibilities of stuff in their books. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We also received an electronic submission from Kelly Keller.
Good evening.
Welcome.
So again, I'm Kelly Howell, I teach American Lit here at the high school. I live in Rockford, but I teach here. I'm just here to give a different perspective on one of the books that was being challenged, because I think that From my understanding, the way that it was depicted in the meeting is certainly not doing the book itself, nor the way that it's taught justice. And that's from my understanding, not being present at that meeting. So I just thought I would share like what would happen with this book in my classroom, if we were in my classroom reading it. So this book is called Homegoing, and it's an excellent book. It covers 300 years of slavery and oppression in both Africa and the United States. And it is in a safe space of fiction that it covers these things. It begins in Africa with two half-sisters who are daughters of one woman. One of these women lives in the castle and one lives in the dungeon beneath the castle. It follows both of their paths, the descendants, one generation at a time. It provides context on both forced immigration, the slave trade, and choice immigration from Africa in later generations, just as the author moved from Ghana to Huntsville, Alabama at the age of 3. 10% of Black people in the United States are immigrants, not people whose genealogy may be traced when there is documentation to the slave trade or plantations that existed here, if that's why they were brought over. And they have a different experience than those who were born in the United States, because the history of what it means to be Black here is different than what we mean in other parts of the world. I rifled through the book to find an excerpt that might be the one that was pulled from the context and stated in its own isolation instead of in the context. I'm imagining this is it because I heard a word over and over again that I imagine that this is what it's talking about. So when I got to that section in there, it says something about the woman saying, just a second, she asked the man to lie on top of her. First, it begins with her saying she cringed when she thought of what had happened between them. They were only children then. This is a direct preface to her memory of this. Then she goes on to say, back then she had been the strong, unshakable one, the one who could talk him into anything. Now she stared at him as he stood, broad-shouldered and smirking, waiting for the favor he knew was pulling at her lips. Clearly, this is about power, the shift of it, and the want for it. The situation continues, and he wields his power over her, and she must leave her society to even continue to exist and live because of the mistakes she made as a young woman. If anything, this quote is a moment of warning for young women. There is nothing explicit about it. If you read it for the context and not these quotes that are pulled out for shock value, this is important. It's important for the piece of art as a whole, and it's important information for our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did not.
Right, we will close public comment. Thank you. And we'll move to action. And our first action item for this evening is food service equipment purchase. And I would entertain a motion for as presented.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion?
Just clarifications for the oven and the tables.
Combi oven and tables, yes. Not yet.
Okay. Okay.
The serving line is coming next.
Got it. All right.
Yeah.
For those two items. All right. Having no further discussion, thank you for the clarification. Vice President Schaffner,
Yes?
Secretary Slager,
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore,
Yes.
Trustee Vanderhyde,
Yes.
Trustee Rivard,
Yes.
Trustee Bowser,
Yes.
President Reed, yes, food service items are approved. Next action item is the 2022-2023 Schools of Choice and Section 105C resolution. I would entertain a motion for as presented.
So
Support.
Any discussion? Having none, Vice President Schaffner,
yes?
Secretary Slager,
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore,
Yes.
Trustee Vanderhyde,
Yes.
Trustee Rivard,
Yes.
Trustee Bowser,
Yes.
President Reed, yes. The school of choice resolution is approved. Action item C, Sex Education Advisory Board Program Recommendations. I would entertain a motion for as presented.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion?
I would just like to say that the state of Michigan compels us to choose an abstinence-only program. And I would much prefer to have a more comprehensive program. It's been shown many times to be better for students. But I will be voting according to what Michigan, the state of Michigan says I have to, and not how I actually feel and how the science actually says.
Thank you. So noted. Any other discussion? Okay, call the vote. Vice President Schaffner,
Yes.
Secretary Slager,
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore,
Yes.
Trustee Vanderhyde,
Yes,
Trustee Rivard,
Yes.
Trustee Bowser,
Yes.
President Reed, yes. Motion carries for the Sex Education Advisory Program. Action item D, City of Cedar Springs utility easement for our upcoming construction. I would entertain a motion for as presented.
So moved.
support.
Any discussion? Having none, Vice President Schaffner,
Yes.
Secretary Slager,
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore,
Yes.
Trustee Vanderhyde,
Yes,
Trustee Rivard,
Yes.
Trustee Bowser,
Yes.
President Reed, yes. So the easement is approved. Last action item for this evening, the 2022-23 organizational meeting revisions. I would entertain a motion for as presented.
so moved.
Support. Any discussion? Vice President Schaffner,
Yes.
Secretary Slager,
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore,
Yes.
Trustee Vanderhyde,
Yes,
Trustee Rivard,
Yes.
Trustee Bowser,
Yes.
President Reed, yes. Motion carries for the revised meeting schedule. Which brings us to the work session portion of our meeting. We can take a breath. And our first item up is construction update on the agricultural science greenhouse.
So one of the items that we had included in the initial, the initial bond proposal from 2019 in November, and then the bond proposal that was passed in August of 20 was to build a new greenhouse space for our ag science program. And so we were, it was really, you've heard of a person without a country or a person without a, yeah, well, we had a greenhouse without a location. Because we really wanted to build it, but we were just trying to find the optimal location to put it into place. And, I've met several times with Mr. Willett, the teacher from the Ag Science program. And ideally, we saw the space just to the south of that wing of the high school being the ideal location, just over the drive that takes us around to the back of the building. The problem was we didn't own that property, which, was a pretty significant problem. But in further review and in some conversations with Mr. Matulis around, we had that space that was a soccer field between Cedar View and the high school. And what I heard over time was that the surface was not adequate for it to be a well appreciated green space. And so when I asked Vic, how often is it being used? Well, he said that they took it offline 2 years ago. And I believe it was CASA and was it CASA that was using it? And yeah. Yeah. But now those programs are utilizing the former grass football field, practice field with greater frequency, and we really haven't had a desire for that space. And so the idea was to reclaim that location and put a greenhouse structure on that parcel, and you can see it in the map in board book. But then also put a cold storage building up adjacent to the greenhouse on that space as well. So what that will do is that will really give the Ag Science program the space that they're looking for and requesting. Now they've got some ideas as to how they can enhance that cold storage structure with some additional items, and they've also got some aspirations to create some space for livestock up in that area as well. And so the neat thing is that with the kind of a creative land swap, they really could take that entire parcel. Currently, they farm some of it, and then they farm some of it adjacent to the soccer field, and they farm some of it to the south of the soccer field. And what we're proposing is that we do a trade. They would take that whole parcel by the high school, between the high school and Cedar View, in exchange for the parcel that they're currently farming down by the middle school. And then we'll create green spaces down there for fields to do a field swap. We can actually put, as we are currently estimating, it's likely we should be able to put 2 fields down at the middle school side by side for soccer, rocket football, whatever teams want to utilize that space. It'll just be a large green space. So it'll be a nice trade for the ag science program. They'll get some space much closer to the high school, and it'll be a nice trade-off for our community teams and our athletic teams. And then we'll have some green space down adjacent to the middle school that they'll be able to use. So also on the map that you can see, in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see 2 red X's. Those are the current cold storage buildings that we're using. One basically is being used by ag science. One is being used by the maintenance team. So both of those buildings need to come offline for several reasons. But one, they're going to be right where the bus loop is going to be for Red Hawk. And so you'll see in the upper left hand, in the kind of the center of the page, you'll see a yellow rectangle. That's a space that we're looking to put up a cold storage building for maintenance. And then the 2 rectangles that you'll see up on that parcel of land that's currently the soccer field, one will be a greenhouse, one will be cold storage for ag science. And then the other yellow rectangle that you see up by the stadium will be a 3rd pole barn structure that we'll be putting up that we'll use for some for maintenance, some for athletics, some for band, just to provide those programs with those spaces that we need for storage. So it's a comprehensive shift, kind of a land swap, but really it makes a lot of sense. If you were to measure the distance between Mr. Willett's classroom at the high school and the walk over to the greenhouse and the cold storage space that we'll be building, or the barn that we'll be building for them, it would be basically the equivalent of walking from the end of that hall down to the Y. So, from a logistics, from a walking perspective, it'll be reasonable for students. The only thing that this model doesn't take into consideration is the woodlot that they have down by the middle school. So they'll continue to utilize that space, and once we can work out some arrangements to get access to the woodlot that's adjacent to that field, that ag science will be eventually cultivated. So it's an exciting shift. So now that we've got a location, we're going to move forward. We've been working with the ag science team. Some students are going to be involved in the planning process. We've been working with Russell. Vic has been a part of the conversations. We're working with the team from Triangle to just help with some logistics, but it's likely that we're going to build these spaces on our own, utilizing building and site sinking fund dollars for the storage spaces, the slabs and the pole barn structures, but then using bond dollars for the greenhouses. So it's nice to have a spot. It's not our first choice, but it's a really close. So any questions on that?
I like it almost better, really, in that area. Well, can cross-country still run?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've had a community member ask about those 2 buildings that are getting demoed because of the bus loop, so they'll be thrilled that they have red X's on them.
Yeah. It's great. It's great. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we really want to get the students involved in the process. We just think that's a natural part of the program. So it'll be neat to see them, be involved in that way. So we're excited.
Looks great,
Some
thank
new
you.
things coming. You're welcome. Why didn't I think of this a year and a half ago? That's the question.
Just in time. All right, thank you. We'll move on to work session item B, book review process update.
Yeah, so I wanted to give you a little update on where we've been and where we're heading still in our revision process for requests for books to be reviewed. So I have met with some of our middle level teachers regarding this to kind of share the plan with them. We've had the opportunity to walk through 3 book challenges and refine that process as we've gone with the committee. And really just a reminder on what that looks like from a former presentation. If a parent raises a concern about a book, we of course want to honor parents' choice in this matter. They would speak to the teacher, and the teacher would work to help them understand the pedagogical goals of what they're doing in class and help them to find something that meets the needs of their family and honors those choices. And that would be we're all set if that can happen. We know that sometimes there are cases where parents may say, well, I have a different concern and I'd like to raise it to a higher level. So if that's the case, we would invite the parent to talk with the principal. And we have a form to fill out that would indicate the specific concerns and outline what those are. And then they would turn that into the principal, who would share it with me. At that point, the principal would call the family to explain this is the process that we'll have in place. It's going to take us a little bit of time. As you know, it takes a minute to order the books and make sure that we get the committee together and we have the chance to hear from the teacher. There's a vetting form that the teacher fills out that says, these are the reasons I chose this book. It's in a collection that looks like this. Here are the reasons that it may be challenging, but here are the merits of that book. The family has the chance to express their concerns as well, so we have some balanced voice there. And then so the principal would call to explain the process that, we'll pull together a committee. We'd like your concerns represented there. The teacher would notify any families who are reading that book. We've had a concern raised. Here's what the concern is. And we would, of course, like you to have the opportunity as a parent to choose for your child. Then I would pull together a book review committee, which I would facilitate but not participate in. That would include parents of children who have students in that same class where the book is being taught or used. It would include the teacher or a representative of the department, and it would include administration from that building, who we all would read the book fully all the way through. And so just so that you're aware, the meetings that we did have, I read the concerns from the parents. I read the vetting form from the teacher. Everyone who was a part of the conversation had a pile of sticky notes, and they made, these are things that I find challenging. These are things that might be good about this book. And then they took their pile of sticky notes to a partner who was not in the same role as them and shared their sticky notes, and then we traded. So it wasn't me representing my concerns or my slant or my bias. It was me representing the conversation I had had with someone else. We took those then to a poster where we sorted them into categories and we processed through it together. What are some of the challenges? Let's be honest, not every book is fully, they have a conflict. Every book does, and has complex characters. So we would expect that in any good work of literature that there would be some things that might be a little bit challenging. That's the meaning of art, is that it gives us the chance to examine, where are we and what do we believe and how do we want to behave and how do we not want to behave. So we talked about the merits of the book, and we talked about the challenges of the book. I took notes. The committee had a chance to really have a deep conversation about each one and weigh those merits and challenges back and forth. And then based on board policy, there's a rubric in board policy about materials. And so the committee members each had a ballot, and they ranked each book on that rubric from board policy. in terms of its appropriateness for the grade level or age that it's being used, in terms of its curricular merits, in terms of any challenges that it might have. At the end of that process, then each committee member had the chance to say, I think we should continue to use the book as it's been used and presented, or I think we should remove the book at this grade span or in this class. I collected all of those and then put together a report that outlined all of that for each book. And they were several pages long, really, for each book. So that's the process that we would go through. I did share a report with you all outlining what the committee's recommendations were. And it gave us a really great chance to reflect on the process and think about, what could we do differently. One of the things the committee raised was we could use some legal definitions. So you had that presentation from Troon. Many of those things will be included in future work should we have the need to pull a committee together again. Because those were definitely questions that people had, what are the legal definitions of, for example, obscenity, pornography, harmful to minors, some of those kinds of things. So that's good work for us to continue to include there. So I would, of course, be glad to answer any questions you have. If you have specifics that you'd like to email me about, I'm happy to answer those questions. If you have questions about the process that we're going through, of course, I'm happy to answer those as well. We just really want to make sure that we balance the choice that parents have to monitor the materials that their students engage with.
I have a question
Sure.
about the process. Is this a process that would be applied to any book that happens to be in the classroom, like even the library of the classroom, or is this more specific to books that are required, or books that are on a list that can be chosen?
Great question,
What
Shannon.
books does this apply to?
Yep. In the case of the 3 that were challenged this current year, two of them were from a list. And one of the adjustments that we've been able to talk through with teachers and that we're working on implementing is the idea that there's some kind of and any other book that you would choose that meets the goals of the class statement included, as well as some communication with parents. One of the books was a classroom library book, and that was a really interesting discussion to have with the committee because that's a much different situation than here's a list. It's more, you can pick anything to read. So, those were discussions that we had. This would apply to any concern that was raised. Unless the book were not designed for people of this age level, we probably would be unlikely to remove it from a classroom library shelf. I know as a former English teacher at the secondary level, if a 7th grader came to me and said, this book maybe has some things in it that I don't know, I would say, oh my goodness, thank you so much. Let's help find you another book. And I would probably check it out myself then as a teacher to say, let me take a look at it. Much like a public library, our teachers aren't expected to read every book on their shelves. We would need to provide them with several years of a sabbatical in order to do that, really. So that, we would handle that a little differently. And certainly our communication with the parent would be, boy, we want to make sure that just like the movies that your child is watching or the apps that they have on their phone or the access that they have on their phone, you do have the right to help, be a part of that process. Does that answer your question?
For the most part, yeah. I guess I would be concerned if there's a lot of parent concerns about just classroom books, then I feel like that adds a lot of work for that classroom teacher if they have to go through all the pedagogical reasons that just happens to be on the shelf.
I see what you're getting at. So the process beforehand is a little bit more with classroom libraries. We're trusting resources where we get information about literary works in order to help guide the selections of what's on our shelves in classroom libraries. So, teachers have a really big job right now as it is. We wouldn't expect them to also be able to be a librarian. That's a whole separate job. So they're trusting lists of, what is AP recommending? What does Scholastic say? What is on purpose reviews? What's in the resource that Scott mentioned mentioned tidal wave. What are the age spans and reviews for those from professional literary resources that help guide what goes on our classroom shelves? If it's a whole class novel that everyone is reading, we would just like a textbook, like you saw with the math adoption, that would come through a board process. If it's a book list, the process that we have in place right now is that it would be going through the department level, and then some vetting materials would stay on file at academic services. And then, of course, you know, that still gives a choice to parents at the end to say, you know, here are some choices that fit my goals academically and the Common Core goals academically and the level of the students and where they are, or other books that we find that could meet these goals. So, you know, just giving that extra piece of, we're working with you, your partners in education with us parents, and we would like you involved in that process because we do want you talking with your students about what they're reading and learning at school. You know, that's one of the great things you can do with your kiddos is to say, tell me what you're reading about. I'm going to read that with you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you sharing the process and what that looked like. So that was very helpful. And I know this has been a lot of work for you. So I don't have any other questions to bring tonight, but I do have some other follow-up questions that I'll probably be asking you and the teacher, because I'm also a parent. So, but I want to stay in my lane and ask appropriately some of those questions just to follow up later, not here. But I just want to thank you for this, though, because this is great.
It has not been me alone. It has certainly been a collaborative effort. So the teachers have been fantastic in giving feedback and saying, yes, we too would like parents to feel supported. Yes, we would love to have a process for this. It'll take us a little bit of time to get that all in place because it is a big undertaking. And certainly one of the great things that we learned is we needed to have a process this year. We certainly learned that. So this gives us an opportunity to move forward in a positive direction and continue to refine.
So one question, you said the professional literary list, obviously, is kind of how we would select those books for the library. There's a lot of, I'm sure, a lot of different scholastic lists. Do we have some that we adopt as kind of, this is how Cedar does it, or is it, as long as it appears on any kind of professional literary list, how does that work?
So, I mean, we would use what the experts tell us in the field of literature. So like College Board and AP, that's how we decide what content we give to those classes, is because it's recommended and we know it will be mentioned at an AP test at some point, or it has been very frequently in the past. We wouldn't use a crowdsource. So Goodreads is an example of a crowdsource. Goodreads is anyone can post their review and say whatever they'd like. That would not be considered a literary review. That would be considered a crowdsource review. We would try to use something that's more from a publishing standpoint or from, you know, developmentally, this is what we would want in front of our students.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned that if a book is challenged, we're going to let the families of anybody else who's reading that book know that that's been challenged. Now, once it's been challenged, next year, any student who selects that book, is that family going to be notified that last year we had a challenge? I mean, how far does that go?
Yeah, thank you. That's an interesting question I hadn't thought about. If the committee has made a recommendation, then we feel pretty good about that recommendation, that, you know, there was a process in place. And one of the things I know that Troon has said to me through this all is it's really important that you follow your processes. If you have a process in place, one of the most important things you can do is follow that process. So that's why we've been refining it as we go, trying to keep you in the loop, keeping teachers in the loop, and making sure that we're in alignment with board policy and with the law. So I don't think we would going forward, but again, that communication with parents is something that we're trying to be more aligned about through our secondary levels, especially. I haven't started working on this in K-5 yet. They have taken a look at it and given me some ideas of what might need to be a little bit different, but just being aligned and saying, you know, here's how we'll communicate about books. it is partially the responsibility of the parents to make sure that they are informed as well. So, you know, we would just want to make sure that we're clear in our communication about that.
And so there is policy coming forward from True, and when that is issued, we can see if it is something that gives us clarity. But I think the focus for right now has been to be sure we're using our existing policies and see how they're serving us. Looking at Jen's work on that process. So it's gonna continue to be a work in progress. It's not just done. And the communication level, you know, be on the uptick with the parents. But as we know, we've heard from we've got 3 lenses going here. We've heard from 2 different lenses from the public comment podium. And then we do have, what we're responsible for is the policy lens. So we'll keep braiding those all together and working along as we go. Where it doesn't seem to make sense that there's one swipe of the pen that's going to fix this. We want our process to be really good and aligned with our policy, so we're going to keep working towards that. And we'll, you know, Tracy will be inputting, there's going to be parent input continue to be.
And again, if you have questions, please feel free to send me an email or give me a phone.
One question we could get is the books that are in the classroom libraries now, have those also been selected using these literary lists, or are those old stock and this is our new process?
So that's a great question. That's why I say it's going to take time for it all to be fully implemented. You know, our hope would be that if there's something that's on the list, that a teacher has gone through a process and vetted that with colleagues and then made a record of that. So that we have documentation of, you know, yep, we've talked about there are some challenges in this and there are some merits, and we think the merits outweigh the challenges. We want to make sure that we have a balanced representation of books on a list. We want to make sure that, you know, what we have in our curricular resources has been board approved. There is certainly work to do going forward in classroom libraries. I think you might find that you would touch a nerve of many English teachers because they spend a lot of their own money and time working on building those up. So, you know, we want to make sure that we're also supporting them and giving them time to do that work and valuing what they're doing every day. One of the comments that was really, really fun that came out of the committee work, one of the parents looked at our teachers and said, I did not realize, I mean, I knew you guys were really good, but I did not realize all the work and thought and preparation you put into what you're doing. And I had the chance today to really hear you unpack that. Wow, our kids are so lucky to have you. And that was just really great to hear from a parent perspective that often as a teacher, you know, much like as a board member, you hear often from people who really have something to say, and not always who are cheering you on. So it was really neat to be able to see that happen in that community.
Thank you.
Onward we go. Anything else? Okay. All right, we'll move forward to the 6th and 8th grade transition plan update with Mr. Smith.
So we had a construction meeting last Thursday morning, and there's been a tremendous amount of work and meetings going on behind the scenes in preparation for the transition that we were anticipating to happen this upcoming fall. So this fall, we were moving forward. We were going to be moving 8th grade over to Red Hawk. We were going to be moving 6th grade over to the middle school. But one of the things that we were hearing from those meetings were, oh, we only have a little bit more time. You know, we're coming on, you know, we're finally seeing the light at the end of the, you know, global pandemic tunnel. You know, if we only have a little bit more time to work through some of the logistics that are before us, we could do it and just move addresses. So basically pick up one grade level and move it to another grade level and drop it down and pick up the other and move it. And all the programming would just be the same as it currently is. But we have some opportunities to reflect and look at our programming to see if there are some opportunities that we could do things better in a different environment. So for example, what could we do differently with sixth grade if they were in that building with the seventh graders? What could we do differently with our eighth graders, given closer proximity to the high school? And so, I promised one of the committees that I was working with that I would ask the question in the construction meeting that I was having the following day. Now, the last time I asked this question, as contractors I would say they kind of giggled when I asked the question, but Burley contractors don't giggle. So I don't know what term you would use to describe the reaction that I got, but I just asked, is there any possibility, is there any benefit to us pushing pause on the work in certain areas of the building so that we could maintain the occupation of the band room for the 2022-2023 school year? And one of the other data points that I put into the conversation was that currently in our fifth grade class, we have 217 students. Currently in our seventh grade class, we have 277 students. And so we could serve 217 students in 8 spaces. We're going to need 11 spaces to serve 277 students. And so when I put that data point on the table, then it wasn't a giggle moment anymore. It was like, wow. So I could have fewer classrooms. There's fewer pressure on the contractors to get those classrooms ready to go, which gives us more fluidity, more flexibility in terms of how we're managing that transition. And so we made the decision on Thursday. The team from Triangle and the team from GMB worked through the logistics with some minor adjustments to their plan. We could maintain that band room space for one more year. We'll actually save money because we wouldn't have to reconfigure the band room into 2 kind of floating classrooms. Those are going to be rotating classroom spaces. So while we were doing the work in classroom A, the teacher from classroom A would be in the band room. And then once their classroom was done, similar to what we did with Mr. Willette's classroom at the high school, when we were doing the flooring in his ag science room, he was temporarily housed down in the library. That's just logistical, gerbils on a wheel. I mean, it just is a really busy time. And so they saw some benefit to pushing the pause, both from pressure on the contractor's schedule, but also on the contractor's budget. The only real downside to pushing pause on the move is that we'll need this building to be functional for, likely another, realistically 24 months from now. So Vic has promised me that he will keep the boiler working well, and came up with some creative ways to maybe do some large scale shrink wrapping of the exterior facade so that we don't have any buildings or bricks coming off. But it's a risk that we're going to have to run. But to me, I think it's the right way to go. It takes just a lot of pressure off the system. So sixth graders will stay at Red Hawk for one more year. It will give them an opportunity to, in a non-pandemic year, have some deeper level conversations in terms of how they want to approach some new ways to provide sixth grade programming. It also gives eighth grade staff a window of opportunity to do some creative thinking around some enhancements that we can make to our eighth grade programming. So that's the reason for the shift midstream, because it just made sense from a human spirit perspective, from a cost perspective. It was the right thing to do. So.
How are we feeling about the exterior of this building? Is there I'm just wondering, I mean, is it going to make 24 months, or do we need to do some kind of a fluid seal, or is there a concern that you have with the exterior of this lasting 24
None
months?
whatsoever.
Perfect.
One boiler, that's it. And then someone learned this week that if you close that door, the room will stay warm, so we're good.
Okay.
Yeah. I was the one that learned that lesson. They taught me that lesson, and I was the one that learned it.
So the exterior, there's no concern. There's statement after statement, even the structure, that's been re-supported. The engineers, I mean, I'm sure you've read all the reports, so we're way good, so.
Thank you. We took the pressure off that exterior wall,
Yep.
which then decreased the burst concern.
Yeah, I mean, everything was just, compacted, so, it was over time. So.
Yep, for sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
So that's the shift that's the push and pause on the Red Hawk shift.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to the North Kent community in Richmond.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring the board up to speed on that. We've been brought into a variety of different conversations in the community. The district really has no, any fiduciary responsibility or commitment to North Kent community in Richmond. We simply provide locations for them to do their programming. And so there was a time when the district, Cedar Springs Public Schools, actually made a contribution out of our general fund budget into supporting one of the 6 at the time entities that provided financial supports to basically keep North Kent community in Richmond afloat. Without those dollars from the townships, from the city, and from the district, the organization just wasn't financially solvent. It wasn't a successful business model. They needed significant support in order to provide the programs that they were providing. And so we stopped making payment in 2018, and then the townships and city picked up the extra dollars that we were reimbursing the program for. But really, it's just a point where the Nelson Township pulled out of the agreement, and so then it left the burden of providing that support to Algoma Township, Cortland Township, Solon Township, in the city of Cedar Springs. And now there's question about from those townships if they too are willing to continue to support the North Kent community Richmond, because frankly, they just don't see a lot of return on the investment for the number of community members that they're seeing using the programs. So it's not that they're not great programs, it's just that the business model is such that the only way it can survive is with some significant infusion of outside dollars in order to keep it afloat. And so it's not a matter of do we want to close North Kent community in Richmond. That's not the question. The question is, do the townships want to continue to fund it? And if they vote no, that's, then it's either incumbent upon the organization to, rise up and become financially independent or close. And so, there have been many questions about, how will community members be able to do recreational activities on campus if North Kent Community in Richmond was to close. I've been working with Russell, and Russell has been working with various stakeholders on campus, Matt Moffett, just in terms of how we can provide access to our spaces for community members moving forward in the event that North Kent Community in Richmond wants to close. And we're confident we'll be able to provide access to spaces at an affordable rate for community members who want to use spaces. So if North Kent Community in Richmond closes, it's not that the pickleball players are no longer going to have a location to play. They will have a location to play. We will figure that out. We know we are committed as a district to providing spaces for our community members to use the facilities. And so, we're not going to, we won't completely close our doors to community members in the event that North Kent Community in Richmond does not is not able to financially sustain operations moving forward. Things like, specific programs that have been asked about, like the daddy-daughter dance and that kind of thing. In many districts, those programs are just functions of the school. So the PTO might run the daddy-daughter dance. Or, depending on the layout or the makeup of the district, a particular building might do a daddy-daughter dance. So, we can do those things independent from an outside agency, providing those supports. So I didn't know if you had questions or if you were hearing things from the community that I could address.
I think you already touched on some of them, I think just general concern about particular programs that might not be available, but yeah. Like I said, I think you touched on it, just affirming, yes, spaces will still be available. There could still be recreational basketball for Weehawks or whatever it is.
Yeah, and those are run right now by the varsity coaches anyway. So the way the only thing that changes would be the athletic department would be buying the t-shirts. Correct.
Can you just briefly hit us with costs that we would incur that we're not currently incurring? And I want dollars and cents, but in general terms.
So I can't project because I just don't know what we would be doing. But I can promise you that if it was not financially sustainable to run a particular program, we simply wouldn't run it.
Okay.
We wouldn't run programs at a deficit. Okay. Or we get creative and reach out to Kent City or reach out to Sparta and say, hey, we want to do a babysitting class. Might any of your middle schoolers like to participate with us? So there's some different ways that we can get creative to make those things happen.
North Kent was doing that, so I don't know that we're gonna be able to do it about it.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're saying when they already were in it.
They were already reaching out to, I think it's really too bad. It's not meant to be a sustainable business. It's supposed to be the community comes together and provides programs to the community. It's disappointing. Oh, it's disappointing. I think it was the name change that started the downward curve. Was the name change.
Based on the books, the downward curve had started a long time.
And no one can remember. I wish I would say that. So March 7th is.
Yes, and I will be abstaining from any vote because we don't have a fiscal connection to the decision.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so for communication, with Board of Education, I've already touched on the book policy piece. We're going to keep policing on and looking that with the different lenses with Jen and the administration. So that will continue. And it's the only one more communication that I have. We've covered everything else.
The staffing train marches on with Mark Dobiash as the conductor. So we interviewed today for student services. We've got middle school principal applications closed. We're doing screening conversations this week. We'll be interviewing candidates for that position in a couple of weeks. We've got the high school assistant principal position rolling. So we're headed in the right direction. One interview at a time.
And we've said it before, but I do have great concern for the workloads that everybody's carrying. We know in our different industries it's big, but it's really big here too. So thank you for that. And cognizant of that work that's going on. So for planning, our next March meetings are March 14th and March 28th. No one needs spring break early. Just saying. So with that, I We have no more business before us this evening. We will stand adjourned at 8:19.